From outstanding high-flying flourishes sinking when they should have soared, to body-breaking brutal bulldozers being diluted by some limp execution, many a wrestler has unfortunately learned the hard way that some acts are a little too hard to follow. I'm Gareth from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 wrestling moves that worked for one wrestler but not for another. Number 10. Moonsault. There's nothing quite like watching a human being throw themselves off the top rope before elegantly falling onto their unsuspecting adversary below. In particular, launching yourself off the turnbuckles and performing a full-on backflip in mid-air is something that will just never get old. But that doesn't strictly mean that incorporating this move into your arsenal will garner you instant critical acclaim. For every outstanding execution of the out-of-this-world feat of athleticism from the likes of the freakish Kurt Angle and Io Shirai, there's unfortunately another instance of a performer never quite hitting the perfect version of the moonsault. In fairness, the stars who quickly figure out that the move isn't for them, looking at you, CM Punk, mid-Night of Champions 2012, tend to leave it well enough alone. But saying that, Charlotte Flair still hasn't given up trying to add more much-needed elegance to her backflip in recent times, despite the fact she also possesses a truly insane corkscrew moonsault that would likely set her apart from other legendary flippers. Number 9. Ankle lock. There's no getting around the fact that some moves are just so iconic that it's a near impossible task to use said weapon without people constantly chastising you for not executing it as well as its previous owner. Luckily for Kurt Angle, when it came time to dust off Ken Shamrock's ankle lock for his own personal use in the squared circle, not only did the star manage to put his own spin on the submission, but he also earned praise from the former UFC star himself. The same sadly can't be said for the likes of the former Jack Swagger though, as Jake Hager quickly found himself in the shadow of the two titanic names when trying to make his own ankle lock a thing. Despite Angle admitting that he wasn't upset about him using the finishing lock, the Hall of Famer has gone on record to state that Hager using the move in WWE was likely just an attempt to replace the Olympic hero in the wake of his sudden departure. Hager may still whack it out on occasion in AEW, but it's little surprise he's generally opted for other ways to get the job done post-WWE. Number 8. Olympic slam. While Randy Orton will occasionally pull out a tribute to one of his old sparring partners from time to time, the Viper didn't make the mistake of trying to spin this well-known move into his own match ender. Apollo Crews, on the other hand, appears to have been made the victim of being admittedly talented in between the ropes, but not quite on the level of the wrestling machine when it comes to nailing the high-angled slam. While Angle's slam would effortlessly flow before rendering his opponent lifeless, Cruz's version feels a touch clunkier and not quite as emphatic. The move is somewhat easier to execute than the one-time IC champ's old unique spin-out powerbomb, but trying to step out of the shadow of a star who made said Olympic slam look like poetry in motion looks set to be a tall order for even a performer as undoubtedly impressive as Apollo. Number 7. Million Dollar Dream. Few moves go hand in hand with a performer quite like the Stone Cold Stunner and the Bionic Redneck himself. But long before the multiple-time WWE champion and Hall of Famer was sending his boss to the hospital via explosive modified cutter, Austin was tasked with trying to get another legendary finisher over. But as many stars who have attempted to get their own stunners off the ground over the years have found out, sometimes it's best to leave some moves to the OGs. Despite still being a decent enough submission to snap into, Austin never quite gelled with the Million Dollar Man's Million Dollar Dream finisher. He'd cutely call back to it from time to time, sure, but there's no questioning the fact that this dream thankfully being put out of its misery in favor of the stunner was the right call in the end. Number 6. Superkick. At the risk of throwing 90% of the current crop of performers who make up the wrestling landscape under the bus, has anyone really replicated the drama and sheer euphoria conjured up by the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels when performing his literal jaw-dropping sweet chin music? Now there's no question that the likes of the Young Bucks, Adam Cole, Kevin Owens, and more have all put their own little spin on the face-melting superkick, but nobody has ever been able to really legitimately put enough stank on it to justify it being their go-to finishing maneuver. Perhaps the most notable example of a star trying and failing to recapture the HBK magic came in the form of Dolph Ziggler reverting to using the epic Michaels S superkick as his match ender. Again, it's not as though the show-off's version completely sucked and resembled you trying to nail a sibling with the crowd-popping move whilst wearing skinny jeans, but fans have never produced the same level of noise as they did for Mr. WrestleMania whenever the former World Heavyweight Champion opted to tune up his particular tribute band. Number 5. Frog Splash. Look, the fact that we get to watch Christian Cage wrestle at all in 2021 is a modern miracle in itself. But that still doesn't negate the fact that the former World Heavyweight Champion has been accused of perhaps executing one of the least celebrated frog splashes in the game. Cage's limp flail through the air onto his poor opponent below would probably slip through the cracks. But when you've got Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, and Montez Ford all seemingly preparing to take off into the stratosphere before pulling off some mid-air extensions that would make an Olympic diver sit up, Cage's splash only looks more unprettier by the day. The same could be said of Sasha Banks' own Latino Heat splash tribute. But the emotional weight that comes with her salute to the star who made her fall in love with wrestling to begin with ensures her rendition will always pack a different sort of punch. Number 4. The Figure 4 Leglock. Another move that is seemingly passed to a new performer by the year hasn't always been a home run, for the passionate soul trying to get over the pain tying someone's legs up can truly inflict. While it's hard to look past the Nature Boy Ric Flair's iteration of the Figure 4 Leglock as the benchmark, the likes of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Ric's daughter Charlotte Flair have all been able to take things up a few notches when calling back to the former World Heavyweight Champion. However, one attempt to mark a star out as someone to watch via the iconic submission sits way beneath those aforementioned adaptations. After being passed the Figure 4 torch by Nate himself, The Miz would go on to use the often imitated submission as his match ender. Yet rather than cinching in the leglock with a snug technique that genuinely left audiences wondering how an opponent was going to survive, Miz simply crossed his legs in a limp fashion and began gurning like a madman. Though it's since gone on to become a less used signature of the Stars, it's still something the Awesome One unfortunately relies on when taking things to the mat. You're probably better off sticking to shaking your hips, Miz. Number 3. Chokeslam. Seeing a towering monster hoist up a sorry soul by their throat before dumping them back down to the ground with an almighty thud is enough to leave just about any audience needing a lie down. But while this tactic undoubtedly worked when it came to presenting the likes of The Undertaker and Kane as indomitable forces of nature, Braun Strowman was a different kettle of fish altogether. After being broken away from his Wyatt family unit, the monster among men was set up to pulverize a string of unlucky goobers on Monday Night Raw in 2016. Strowman wasn't just equipped with a newfound need to murder jobbers though. He also came brandishing an inverted chokeslam. Well, for about 5 minutes. After it quickly became apparent that the move just wasn't catching on and would likely be difficult to believably use on bigger folk, the traditional chokeslam would then be shuffled into the rest of his #WWE Big Man toolkit. Number 2. Spear. Much like the earlier touched upon superkick, it's hard to get through a modern professional wrestling match without seeing someone attempt to tackle their rival into next week. Depending on who is sprinting shoulder first into a performer's torso though, the end results have been known to drastically vary. Should Da Man, who racked up a legendary undefeated streak in WCW, catch you in the sternum, or a tribal chief decides to flip you inside out with their signature spear, expect the carnage to be as beautiful as it is brutal. However, there's a few other names who can't confess to having the most hard-hitting or impactful of running body pulverizers. Both Edge and Christian's versions, though undoubtedly smooth, struggle to leave audiences wincing in their seats. While Batista's spear also didn't smack through an opponent as sweetly as you'd expect it for a man possessing his unique level of power. And the less said about Paul White's bouncing off of his enemies, the better. There is still hope in the form of Bobby Lashley reducing folks to dust via his crunching spear with additional forward roll though. So all hail the Almighty. Number 1. The elbow drop. For a number of reasons, most notably his ability to routinely nearly take the roof off of arenas, CM Punk can hold a claim to being the best in the world. His insistent use of an iconic elbow drop sadly isn't one of said reasons, however. With respect to the recently returning star though, how can you possibly top the signature finish produced by one of the most charismatic wrestling forces ever? Macho Man Randy Savage's heart-stopping elbow from the heavens was the stuff of legend for many a wrestling fan growing up, with the sunglasses and cowboy hat flaunting presence seemingly hovering in the air for an eternity until he gracefully crashed into his adversary's chest. Punk, on the other hand, flounders through the sky like he's trying to emerge from a body of cold water and fumbles onto whoever is trembling beneath. The likes of Shawn Michaels, Kairi Sane, Xavier Woods, and many more have all shown that a savage tribute can be achieved. And sometimes they even surpass what came before. But expect the AEW man to keep doing whatever the hell he pleases regardless. Cause the chip magnet's gonna do what the chick magnet's gonna do. And that's our list. Know of any other wrestling moves that work for one wrestler but not another? Let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button. Also, be sure to head on over to whatculture.com and find some more incredible articles just like the one this video you are watching is based on. I've been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you as always for clicking on this video today, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon. Bye bye!